Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen. It is your boy HMK here once again, and we are joined here by awesome Zelda content creator colleagues and friends to talk about the wild revelation that is Tears of the Kingdom. And when there's 5 of us here, so let's go through the room, introducing each of them. First, how are you doing today, Miss Click? How are you?
Hi, I'm doing phenomenal. How are you guys? I'm ready for, I don't know, just to geek out about this because they didn't give us a lot, but they gave us enough. You know what I'm saying? So this is some good stuff.
For real, I feel they gave us, like, even though people said this trailer was kind of short, I feel like it was pretty beefy. But thank you so much for joining us. Now, of course, over from across the pond, we have Conrad of Commonwealth Realms. How you doing today, good sir?
Very hyped, looking a lot forward to the 20th Zelda game. We finally have a title. As you said, the trailer is very packed, especially with lore, mysteries, and the likes. We're gonna probably be detailing a lot. And at last, I can finally wear this tunic again and be proud of it, and that's all that matters.
Of course. I mean, like, I haven't worn this shirt in so long, and this is like the shirt that I used to like start my channel way back, like almost 10 years ago. So I'm like, you know what? I gotta show the love for today. Now, when it comes to looking into the past of all types of content creation and my journey on YouTube, there is someone here that's very special to me. Rebel Luigi, how are you doing today?
Oh, that was beautiful. I'm doing very well, thank you. Very excited. I thought this day would never come. We have a title. It's a good start, and you know, the trailer itself was pretty short, and Nintendo used the time well. So hopefully we can do the same today.
Hopefully, but thank you so much for joining us. And then last but not least, I want everyone in this chat, I want everyone on Twitter, I want everyone on YouTube to apologize to this man right now for making all that Zone 8 content, because he was right. Nintendo Black Crisis, how you doing?
Oh my gosh, is that a so nice? Anyways, yeah, yeah. I'm hyped. Like honestly, you know, I know people like to meme about all like the Zonai stuff, but most of us did go in expecting it, you know, the possibility of it not being a thing. And I'm honestly surprised with how relevant they seem. Like I posted on Twitter, it's crazy to think that like they've been immortalized in the logo for the sequel to Breath of the Wild.
That's crazy.
Like, yeah.
But man, I'm glad to have you here, because we got a lot to pick your brain when it comes to the concept of that, because I feel that no one knows it better than you. But
all I can say is there probably will be a part 3.
Oh, I believe a part 3 of your series and a part 3 of the game too.
Well, it's perfect for like the part 3. It'll just be like the answer. You know, we should have more information of what they really were. So I think it'll be a very fitting end to that trilogy.
Oh, definitely. But all things considered, I'm glad to have you all here. We're going to go right into the spiel. But before we do, ladies and gentlemen, Nintendo stepped forward and confirmed it to Eurogamer. It is officially Tears of the Kingdom. Not Tears of the Kingdom, not anything else. Eurogamer stepped up and was like, hey, listen, we talked to Nintendo, they confirmed. It's Tears, as in cry, as in droplets of liquid that gets secreted from your eyes.
What chads, man.
Right?
Like,
oh, man. But now that that's finally put to rest, let's pick y'all's brain for a little bit when it comes to what we saw from the trailers. And we're going to go around the room, and then we're going to go like wild after that. So I'm going to throw the ball over to Miss Click first. Miss Click, tell me, what was your favorite part of that trailer?
Had to be the hieroglyphics, man. Chat, I don't know if you can hear me. Sorry if the audio is always weird, but it always has to be the hieroglyphics. I think for me, and I was saying to chat, I'm hoping, whether it's flashbacks or whatever it is, we're getting a character that almost reminds us or is reminiscent of the relationship that we had with another leader like Zelda or Midna. with the Twilight or something, just because that bond, it reminds you of like the you know, the GIF or whatever of like, oh, we got this, but it's like to me it resembles, you know, a bond, a symbol of, you know, these two leaders are coming together to lead their people, or maybe it's time of crisis. You know, we see the invasion looking earlier in the trailer. I don't know. I just think that whoever that large, you know, figure that we see on the hieroglyphics is gonna be probably a character that we're either gonna really come to love, or be betrayed by, or come to hate. Whatever it is, I'm excited to see like what the relationship is, and is that the mysterious hand that we've seen in the trailers? Like, we don't know, but it just seems like a new character, so it's a new relationship, and whatever it is, I'm excited for it.
Oh, I'm so glad we started off with that one, because like that, I feel that character, that entity is like front and forward with everyone's like thought process of like, who could this character be and whatnot. I've seen a lot of people saying that could be a different interpretation from another tribe, such as the Zonai, of how they perceive Hylia. And I'm like, I get that, how they, you know, connecting their hands like, oh, Zelda, Hylia, you know, one and the same for all eternity. But at the same time, you know, I want to lean more into your thought process with that, because at the top of that hieroglyphic, which is shown off at the end of the trailer where the logo is blocking it, it shows two tiers at the top, but the tiers are like mirroring each other. So I want to assume that
the same coin almost.
Exactly, right? Like two different entities that are somehow connected. I want to go to that camp. I mean, I believe both, where it could be someone completely new, or it could be a different way of how another tribe perceives Hylia. But I love that the conversation is back, and that's a really great way to start off when it comes to like your favorite part of the trailer. Now I'm gonna throw the ball over to Rabbit Luigi. What was your favorite part of the Tears of the Kingdom trailer?
It starts sounding original, but the hieroglyphics were perfect for me, because the first thing you see, I mean, this is at the end of the direct anyway, so you're like, please be Zelda. Please be Zelda. And the first thing you see is not immediately Zelda. I mean, you can probably work it out by, you know, the fact that the hieroglyphics are in Breath of the Wild in some way, but it's confusing because it's a character that's not immediately recognizable as Zelda or Link or Ganon or whoever. So it's generating that discussion again, because it's not immediately evident what's happening or what it's being depicted here. It kind of speaks to an untold history that is important for this game. And the other thing I like, and this is kind of something that is completely different to the rest of the trailer, because like once you get through the hieroglyphics and Link bust through that giant door, it's back to like gameplay and hey, this game's going to be very different. It's got like, you know, stones moving up and down, that sort of stuff. But those opening, like the short trailer, maybe 30 seconds, it's kind of creepy. In my personal view, you don't really know what's happening. There's some weird ambient music going on. My favorite parts of, I guess, 4 trailers we've had so far have been the creepier side of things, where they're obviously doing something a little bit suspicious, a little bit creepy. Ganon's, you know, crispy and having a great time, but I like the fact that there's this mystery to it. It's not just, hey, look at this funky gameplay. No, there's some really important stuff at the start of this trailer. So that hooked me immediately. And once I worked that it was Zelda, yeah, perfect.
You know, it's crazy that you bring that up, because I was talking with a couple of friends of mine, and you know, like you said, technically we have 4 trailers because I count the delay announcement as a trailer.
I was debating that one.
Yeah. The thing is, it's funny. We've seen gameplay, but we haven't seen any true extended look at combat. Right? The most we got was the shield, and like the shield with the flamethrower on it. That's it. You know what I mean? So like, I like how you pointed out that we have this big shift of, you know, what these trailers are trying to portray. And it seems that this game is going to be a lot more story oriented than the first, right? Which is something that a lot of people has been wanting from Breath of the Wild 1. So it's cool to see, or insinuate, that Tears of the Kingdom is going to be doing that. But another thing that gets me hopeful is that, you know, when we finally do see combat, like combat might be shifted in a way that's going to be a little bit more, for lack of a better word, stylish. You know, because I was a big fan of Twilight Princess's combat, and I feel like it didn't reach its full potential in that game. So I would love to see, you know, them reutilizing ideas from that game in a wild, game like Tears of the Kingdom. Now I'm going to throw the ball over to Conrad. What was your favorite part of the Tears of the Kingdom trailer?
Well, I think it's quite easy. It is the title of the game. We've been waiting so long just for those 4 words, because we knew they would go with the same style as Breath of the Wild. It's just too valuable marketing-wise. I think Breath of the Wild at this point is more valuable than the rest of the Zelda franchise combined.
Oh, easy. Easy.
So I think that was the key, and also adding a very fresh logo background. It's not just a sword anymore. You have a proper symbol, 2 dragons, and the whole ring surrounding it. So yeah, it's just remarkable. That's all I'm going to say.
Now I'm glad you brought up the name, because like that's something that we've all been like itching for. And then I know that for some of y'all and some people in the chat, and everyone on social media, like some people really feel it, some people are just like trying to grow onto it. Personally, from frame 1, I was like, Tears of the Kingdom, that song is so badass, because I really like the idea, like how Rabbit was saying earlier, that they're doing a lot of sus stuff. They're doing a lot of shady, darker stuff. And then Tears of the Kingdom sounds really sus. Like, I'm like, that sounds pretty dark, and I'm here for that, right? A lot of people are like, it's a little on the nose, but I mean, at the same time, I'm like, we don't really know truly what are the Tears of the Kingdom. We have plenty of theses.
Switching us. Yeah, they could be bait and switching us for sure. They could be like, well, it seems like one thing, but then you actually get into the game.
Right.
And then it's kind of like, this isn't going the exact way I pictured.
Exactly. Like, just like in Twilight Princess, in the very beginning of the game, Minna's like, oh, Twilight Princess, when referring to Zelda. I'm like, oh, that's kind of whack. But then you find out, like, oh, Minna's a Twilight Princess.
Her.
Spoilers, right? So I'm really digging that name. Now, last but not least, when it comes to this subject, NBC. How do you feel on what's your favorite part of the trailer? Talk to me.
I mean, yeah, obviously, like, it's cool to see what they might do with the zone. That's the first obvious one. Also, just quick, I was cutting out randomly, so if I suddenly cut out, it's probably internet issues. Just want to let you know.
Gotcha.
So I wasn't too sure about, like, a very specific thing, but Conrad's absolutely right with the title. It's nice to finally have a title for the game. But it also is just so interesting, because, like, they didn't want to reveal the title because of the whole spoiler thing. So just trying to figure out what, like, that was is kind of interesting. But also, something I thought of recently is they may have still just not been sure about what to name it. That's also a possibility. And, you know, I'm all for, like, seeing story stuff is really cool, but I also appreciate that they're not, you know, releasing much story-related stuff. I'm more interested in all the overworld, because, you know, if they're reusing Hyrule, then they need to have a bunch of interesting stuff. And I'm still hoping there's a focus on underground gameplay. And,
me too.
You know, despite the whole, which it's funny because we didn't see Zelda at all in that trailer. She's just kind of like in her, you know, just chilling at the bottom of a pit, I guess. I'm still holding out that we will have some sort of playable Zelda, in terms of, like, I was thinking it'd be cool if after each dungeon, it kind of switches perspectives to her exploring wherever she dropped down.
Like in Paper Mario 1?
Yes, Paper Mario.
No.
Witcher.
Siri.
Yes.
Siri. Witcher 3.
We're talking about Nintendo games here, Conrad.
Well, no, it's funny because, like,
the train.
I use that exact example in one of my videos, like Paper Mario, where, like, you know, after each dungeon, you could just have a short segment with Zelda. She's exploring through a cave. Maybe show off some of her, like, powers in some, like, fights that, you know, they just kind of show off her goddess powers or something. I don't know. And then she just, like, sees all these murals on the wall underground, and it just gives us an idea of the very, like, ancient history, you know.
That's I would love something like that, you know, because obviously we've been talking about, like, for a couple of years now on the possibility of Zelda being playable, right? But I will say this, NBC, you were saying something and it activated a theory for me, which we were gonna spin into this next subject anyways, and that is dealing with the title itself of Tears of the Kingdom. And I want to hear you guys' theories and ideas on what that could mean. But what NBC was going off on, I'm like, okay. Remember, like, a lot of people was like, oh, we're gonna be getting playable Zelda, and then we see the second trailer where she falls into a crevice or whatnot, and then we didn't see her in the third trailer, and I'm guessing that this could mean something that pertains to the title of the game, and then that's why it could be a spoiler, right? The Tears of the Kingdom, right? Why would there be Tears of the Kingdom? If we're going to be talking about crying and tears and stuff like that, I want to assume that we're going to have to think about... I'm going to throw it over to you, Connor, after this. But I assume that we're probably going to have to deal with a subject of... and then considering what's going on right now, this might be on the nose and then whatever. But I feel like we're going to have to deal with some possibility of mourning, in which, like, if something were to happen to Zelda, that could activate a chain reaction to the land itself that we're seeing in Hyrule right now, in which, Ganondorf possibly, doing away with Zelda could activate Tears of the Kingdom, right? In which the kingdom, like a living, breathing entity, and as we know, it's like, the Triforce is tied to the land's providence, whatnot, and the Triforce is bound to Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf most of the time throughout Zelda's history. If something were to happen to Zelda, then if we were to perceive Hyrule as some sort of sentient entity, then the land itself would mourn for its ruler, or the destined ruler, and then that activates the Tears of the Kingdom, in which, possibly have to, maybe save or revive Zelda. But I'm just like, that could be a possibility, especially considering that, this game could be very shady or whatnot. But that's what I'm going off that. But I want to hear what you guys think about what Tears of the Kingdom could possibly mean. Conrad, I'm throwing the ball over to you.
So, seeing from a gameplay perspective, which usually the titles of Zelda games are tied to, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, either it's an item, like say the Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, or main character that is very closely attached to Link. So I think Tears of the Kingdom might also be gameplay related because of the tears we have seen of how Link gets up to the sky, because of the hand that is of spiritual nature and allows Link to go up to the divine or realm of the spirits of the afterlife of Zelda. And that's also why maybe we can see the different sky islands, but everyone surrounding us cannot, because Link is partially alive and dead at the same time.
I like that.
He wouldn't have survived that encounter with Ganondorf if it wasn't for the hand. He would have fallen down with Zelda.
That gives me it gives me a little bit of vibes of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, when in the beginning of the game when Rex gets killed, but then Pyra was able to share her life force with him and then keep him alive. That could be something that we could see in Tears of the Kingdom, where and that would also explain why Link is level 1 again in the beginning of the game. He straight up got murked by Ganondorf, right? To the point where the Master Sword got busted up. He got busted up, and the only way to keep him alive was possibly that hand, sharing life force with him or turning him into a pseudo spirit type, entity. And then that could also pertain to the vial on his hip, in which is okay, this is how much life you got left. You got to keep finding more spirit energy to keep yourself alive. A lot of people thought oh, maybe this is the energy that helps power the arm, but no, that could just help power him. So
stay alive juice.
Right?
Well,
yeah.
on the topic of you're just talking about how if the hand didn't save Link, then he would have died. I've always thought it's kind of interesting. It reminds me of all things like Avengers: Infinity War, where there was the one outcome where they could win, and that was giving Thanos the Infinity Stone. And I can't help but think, is that maybe why the seal ends up breaking early? Ganondorf causes this collapse of the cave, and then if the hand didn't interject, both Zelda and Link would have died. So it willingly chose to release the seal early, because while it brings ruin to the kingdom, it would be the only possible way to save it in the end. Because if it just continued sealing, then Link would have died with, possibly with Zelda.
Right.
That's kind of one thought that I've had.
That's really cool, because considering the hand was okay, Ganondorf is gonna wake up regardless, right? If I don't break this off now and save these two, then we lose regardless in the end, right?
Exactly.
So that's a good line of thinking. Just I really want to know what that arm is. That's the biggest mystery we've been dealing with since 2019. But now I'm gonna throw the ball over to Rabid and tell me your thoughts on what you think Tears of the Kingdom could pertain to.
So what I quite like, and this is picking up on Conrad's point, is that the title of Zelda games often are something physical. So obviously Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, they're all items it kind of fell apart with Breath of the Wild because that's not really a physical thing. That's kind of like the essence of the game, is that it's like, you know, the feeling of being in the wild and being this weird caveman who's been asleep for 100 years and you're coming out and whacking people with axes. It's that kind of concept. So I don't think, I mean, the hieroglyphs kind of point towards there being physical tear-shaped objects, and that may factor in somehow. But I quite like the idea that just the general overview of the game can be described as like the tears of the kingdom. The only thing I'm thinking which kind of contradicts that is that like Hyrule's already been through quite a lot over the last, like, I don't know, you've only gone back 10,000 years when they screwed that up. But like the last, like, when you are awake in Breath of the Wild, it's a post-apocalyptic game. Like, you've lost. Hyrule's lost. It's been screwed over by tons of enemies. So maybe it's the thought that they're slowly getting their lives back, only for it to be messed up again. Would that be enough to evoke that, you know, reaction, like a Tears of the Kingdom sort of thing? Not too sure. I do like the idea of something happening to Zelda, though. Perhaps not in such a way that would evoke that kind of reaction, but I think you need something that can be the catalyst at the start of the game, because I think, you know, Ganon's gonna come back and just cause havoc. It depends if that is in a slightly more, you know, less implied way, or if it's gonna actually, you know, kill Zelda or something. And yeah, I guess people would be pretty sad about that. But you know, it's interesting to see what they're going to do, because it's not immediately obvious what they're going to do. And that's, you know, the fact that people weren't sure if it was tears or tears until it was confirmed kind of tells you that we're not sure what that will mean, and that's only a good thing,
right? Like I'm down to like continue this mystery going into release, because I mean, I feel like that's the whole mystifying sense of what helped the original Breath of the Wild. The less we knew, the better. We went and dove right into this world, and then like everyone's journey. That's like Breath of the Wild was more than a game when it came out. It was like in a whole event that everyone had their journey the different way. Sure, it all ended the same, but our way to get towards the end was like our own, and like I felt that was help, coupled by the fact that, you know, we only knew so much going into it. So like, even though this game seems to be more story oriented, I only would like so much understanding of that story going into Tears of the Kingdom, and possibly like any more than that is just how it relates to the original, and then that's it. And then we go right in, because the game's coming out in May, which is about like 8 months and change, and I am ready for it. But to round out this question, let's go ahead and throw it over to Miss Click. What do you think Tears of the Kingdom could be?
Yeah, I'm trying to be careful with what I say here, because I don't want to get in trouble. So there might have been once upon a time I was in a call with some people from a certain company, and something might have maybe possibly slipped a little bit regarding about possible, you know, like actual confirmation of time travel versus it being different realms.
Yes,
but you know, very quickly to brush over tracks and, you know, really act professional about it. Just saying, you know, it sent a couple of us in a tizzy, and we're like, did you hear that? Like, we're freaking out. It's been a bit since then, but I don't think the premise, you know, of the story maybe has changed too much, or maybe, you know, they realized that, you know. Anyways, all I'm gonna say is that for me personally, this is a selfish thing, is okay, first off, I'm not super on the playable Zelda train. It's just not really.
I feel that,
like, to me, like, she's the untouchable, she is the goddess, like we're not worthy kind of thing. And people are gonna be like, oh, but I want to play her, whatever.
Age of Calamity.
I just think that, you know, she's too perfect for you to be falling off cliffs with her. Anyways, what I genuinely kind of personally selfishly want is, you know, obviously we see the hieroglyphic with Zelda. Seems like she's in a sacrificial kind of stance, which is very reminiscent of her in Skyward Sword, when, so spoiler alert if you haven't played the game, it's my favorite game, you know, Hikariemr is sacrificing her to reawaken the form of Demise. If you literally hold those two frames together, the hieroglyphic and then Zelda in that form, It's very, very reminiscent. I don't know if they would have specified it. They didn't show anything around that frame of that hieroglyphic, so I think it's hard to tell if it. This kind of is interesting because it reminds me a little bit of God of War, where you, again, spoilers, but you know, there's hieroglyphics and you see that there's kind of a prophecy that you know is unfolding, and it's current, and it's not something that happened in the past. It's happening right now. Part of me is like, well, what if Zelda falls, but if that element of time travel is real, is she going through a process at the same time we are, or we're able to go back and forth in time, but is she stuck somewhere else in another time?
Ooh, somewhere outside of that time.
Yeah, or maybe it's kind of like Skyward Sword, where she is, you know, off on her own journey this whole time, and we are as well. But maybe during that time she realizes she needs to sacrifice herself in order for the seal, or maybe, you know, she meets these people. That could be a very real thing. The thing with Zelda is like, whether it's, you know, the sacred realm, or, you know, realm of the afterlife, or whatever it is, like nothing seems too far-fetched, because they always end up making it make sense when you get into the context. So right now, like, all these different options seem like, oh, that's too far out there, oh, that's too predictable. Nintendo can make it super predictable, but it's the process of getting to that predictable end that sometimes can blow our mind. So I don't know. I think for me, I just like, much like how we see Link in a different garb, you know, with the arm, you know, and the new abilities, maybe Zelda is on her own. You know, maybe something happened to her, and maybe, you know, the vials, it looks very reminiscent of the vials for the Tears of Light.
Mm-hmm.
You know, specifically kind of reminds me of, you know, that we see in like Twilight Princess, which was kind of primitive. It was, you know, more of like an actual like grapevine looking thing, versus
Mm-hmm.
this one looks much more mechanical, like much more like this is specifically created for this, like, you know, and it's hard to explain what I'm thinking. Like, there's just a lot going on.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
I'm excited. I think that one way or another, for me, I think it would be cool if Zelda isn't just out for the count right away, but it wouldn't be the first time.
Yep.
So I don't know. I think whatever's down in that pit, I wanna find out right away.
Regarding your point about how it could be Zelda being sacrificed, one thing that some people have pointed out is how at the bottom it does look like there is some of those like tendrils of malice.
Yeah, the malice lines on the hieroglyphics.
Yeah. Because like on the previous scene, obviously the thing that's behind the army are like is the malice, and it's like overwhelming the forces. And those similar shapes are seen below whoever could be sacrificed. So yeah, it very well could be some sort of ritual, you know, calling back also to Skyward Swords, because similar posing.
Yeah.
Now, going off of what Miss Click said, this is a beautiful way to segue into this, because this was going to be like a future topic within the discussion, but this is like the best part to talk about, is that predictability and connections that we could possibly see to that of previous Zelda games, because obviously there's a lot of things that we see within all the trailers of Tears of the Kingdom that harken to, you know, previous Zelda games that people debate and argue. As like, oh, you think Nintendo will do it? Please. Oh, they're not going to do that. Zeldas are contained, yada, 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 and all that stuff. We're definitely getting a lot of vibes, once again, just like in the original Breath of the Wild, from Skyward Sword in Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, literally, we're in the sky once again. But we're also getting a big motif that I feel that should not be ignored from Twilight Princess, right? And that is a massive connection that I need to see, and Nintendo, don't be cowards, all right? So let's talk about the possibility of those connections being actual in Tears of the Kingdom. Specifically, let's start off with Twilight Princess first, because I feel Skyward Sword is a little easy. So let's go into like, you know, the difficult mode. I'll go ahead and start when it comes to like the Twilight Princess stuff that I feel that we can perceive and whatnot. Obviously, the green energy, right? A lot of people associate this green with the Zonai already, but you know, funny enough, other than, I would say, some very, very, very minimal things that we see in the original Breath of the Wild and in Creating a Champion, you know, the whole idea of Zonai being attributed to green happened really, I would say, organically. Because like they attributed to, like, you know, the tribe of courage, you know, the Zonai ruins was in the Faron region and whatnot, and then all people associate the Zonai tribe with luminous stones and whatnot. So that kind of like green essence feel up until the reveal of this title was always like, okay, they could like, how did this happen? Yada yada yada. And this green is very similar to that of the green of Twilight Princess. And people are like, oh, you're going off that on just that. No, there's a lot of symbology that we see within that of the Zonai, within that of Breath of the Wild trickled all over the game, and within that the Tears of the Kingdom trailer, in which you're like, okay, this is giving me Twilight Princess vibes, which, you know, a lot of people have been saying, myself included, that there's a big possibility that the Zonai and the Twilight, or the Interlopers for that matter, could be one and the same. And whatnot. I have plenty more thoughts to say on this, but this is the piece I want to get out on that. I'm going to throw the ball around to everyone here, but first and foremost, I'm going to throw it over to MBC because I know he's itching behind that camera that is not there. So go ahead. What about Twilight Princess connections to Tears of the Kingdom?
Oh, I'm really sweating right now. It's really hard to like think back because it's been such a long time since I delved into that mystery.
But off rip, just to go like
very similar architecture. One of the most common things is like the squarish spiral thing. Other people posted on like the sides of Xant's throne. That's also seen on as like the spine of the giant dragon statue in Faron Woods. It's also seen on some bridges, which could also be Zonai within Faron. What else? Obviously the energy, the greenish outline, especially of like the logo with that master sword. Even like the Twilight themselves on their bodies, they have like those green line engravings, and it looks so similar to like the weird ones on Hyrule's surface.
Yep.
And also like, oh, it's such a huge rabbit hole because like because the fused shadow, like the eyes on it and stuff, it looks the same as like Majora's Mask. So the question then is, okay, wait, so are the interlopers then somehow related to the tribe that did the hexing rituals or whatever? And like are they the same thing? You know, Zelda has a history of constantly introducing dark tribes. So then the question is, are they all similar, or it can entirely also be the fact that they just like to incorporate a bunch of dark tribes just for separate games, and they just get rid of them? Because we've never really had a tribe come back. It's always they've always come back as like a new name. So the natural assumption is that these are just all unrelated. So it's really hard, but it is very interesting.
Right, I definitely feel that. Yeah.
Sorry, fused shadow. It lights up in the pause screen. It lights up with all those, and it's purely like a green lines everywhere. It's really interesting.
Yeah,
Anyways,
I definitely I definitely agree with the sentiment that like, oh, it could be, you know, these things could not be connected or whatever, because Nintendo always does that when it comes to Zelda games. They introduce this big concept, this big tribe, and then self-contained within that game, and they never talk about it again. But they finally broke that tradition. I feel that a lot of people really acknowledge that with Breath of the Wild, which there was a lot taken from Skyward Sword. Designs, lore, you know, like these statues, like the goddess Hylia statues that you see in Breath of the Wild are lifted directly from Skyward Sword. You know, if we were going off what Zelda is known for doing, then those designs would have been like shifted around or whatnot. The Master Sword and the Hylian Shield designs are completely the same from Skyward Sword going into Breath of the Wild. So there's a lot of motifs that are going from that game to this game. So when people say, oh, self-contained, we can't really say that anymore, you know, going off of what Breath of the Wild has done as one of the things that has broken the norms of Zelda. But I'm going to throw the ball over to Miss Click on what do you think on the possibility of, you know, Twilight Princess connections to Tears of the Kingdom? Uh-oh.
No, man. I mean, again, it's just like we want like some form of closure. We were hurt after Twilight Princess. You know what I mean? Like our hearts were ripped out. Like there were some of us crying. I know some people cried. Minnow was your waifu. Let's be real here. It's okay. There's no shame in that. She was great. She was freaking badass. Like all I'm gonna say is that for me, maybe this is like too forgiving, but I feel like as long as maybe possibly we can get a relationship reminiscent to what we had to Midna, kind of like what I said earlier, as long as we get that relationship that kind of maybe feels familiar, but it's new and like the player recognizes it, you know, maybe Fi recognizes it, but to this Link or to this Zelda, you know, we're not, you know, this is a whole new thing to them, unless, you know, they receive memories or something. I don't know. All I'm gonna say is that, you know, I think the distinction that that specific color green or teal or whatever you want to say, being so absent for the most part from Breath of the Wild, you know, there are also like very other little glimpses, and kind of like the otherworldly actions, like when a monk disappears, you know, in one of the shrines, you know, it has like that faint glimmer, you know what I mean, of that color. So it's very like, I feel like they're very intentional with the color scape, with the color scheme, it being absent, and then all of a sudden it is full on blast, you know, like on this game, you know what I mean? It's something that I think that like one of you mentioned earlier, you know, like this is like the forbidden knowledge of Breath of the Wild's time. You know, this is something that we've kind of just been like, ooh, there's more, like give us more, like we want to find out. Oh, DLC, this isn't it, this isn't what we want, like we still want more. So I don't know. I hope that the thing is, whether the, you know, the Zonai is related to the Twilight or anything related to the Twilight Princess realm. At first, I got really excited when I saw the you know, the hieroglyphics. Everything was kind of, you know, circling around, and I was like, oh man, I was looking for glimpses of a mirror somewhere in there.
Oh yeah, they had the mirror of Twilight. Yep.
It's the Twilight mirror, man. But or the mirror of Twilight. But you know, I think for me, it's one of those things. Like, I love the fact that Zelda, specifically Breath of the Wild to Skyward Sword, like these two games being so special to me, is like the callbacks of, you know, Zelda hearing Fi. And like, if you play Skyward Sword, you're like, oh my God, this is the first time we've heard her talk in God knows how long. And then it's a very special, intimate moment. But to Zelda, this is just happening, and I have to respond to it. Oh, we can save Link, cool. Now it's like I'm wondering if they add more moments like that in Tears of the Kingdom that are callbacks that we as the player are really going to feel significant about, but the characters might not necessarily realize that they are. So I don't know. I have this whole other theory too, that Tears of the Kingdom could also be like the royal family, you know, previously didn't handle situations the best, and now we're having to pay back. You know, as I had been saying for forever since we saw, you know, the first couple trailers, like, are there skeletons in the closet?
Massive.
They kind of just swept things under the rug, and now we're paying the consequences. Or specifically, is Zelda, you know, going to be paying the consequences? Link will pay the consequences, but Zelda is usually the one that's like, you know, like getting locked up and freaking life sucked from her. But it's besides the point. I don't know. Maybe we get the reminiscent relationships that aren't the same, but they give you a lot of those gentle nudges of, wow, this is really special.
Nah, you're completely right when it comes to like everything that's going on with the royal family behind the scenes. They have so many skeletons in their closet. Man, have you seen the Shadow Temple? They have done so much. Man, you don't go fuck the royal family, bro. I'm like, nah. I'm not. But considering that, I would love any callbacks to that, because I mean, like you said, like Fi being in Breath of the Wild is such a big deal. It's a huge deal, you know. So going off that and the first trailer of of Tears of the Kingdom, you know, a lot of people's like, yo, is what we're hearing, like the language or the speech that we're hearing, yo, is that Fi in reverse? Is that Twilight language? Because I mean, it kind of similar to how Minna used to talk in Twilight Princess. We don't know, but I mean, it could be that. I mean, that green, that green is just, it's too what do you call it? What's the word? Iconic within the Legend of Zelda. So I feel like, you know, when people are getting activated and say things like Twilight Princess, you know, maybe you shouldn't sandbag us for thinking so, because I mean, like, I love that game. So considering all of that, Rabbit Luigi, Tears of the Kingdom, Twilight Princess, do you think there's a connection? Would you want there to be one? Let me hear your thoughts.
I think it's entirely possible. Just picking up on the green stuff, the iconography, the dominant color, basically all throughout Breath of the Wild, apart from, like, you know, there's lots of grass. You can't say that. No, that's not green. No, it's blue. Sheikah blue is everywhere in that game. It's Link's primary tunic. It's in every shrine, everything you do in that game, every ancient, chic little thing, the Guardians have it, everybody has it, because it's the most important thing. I quite like the idea of them shifting away from that, both as like an obvious way as part of the first trailer saying, oh, this ain't Breath of the Wild no more, we ain't got no blue, we've got lots of green though. It's also kind of like the opposite of like the red, purpley malice kind of color.
Yep.
So it's like a massive polar opposite. In terms of how this links with Twilight Princess, honestly, I don't really know, because I haven't I've played the games, but I haven't read through I haven't read Hyrule story in a little while. But I kind of agree with the idea that the way that Nintendo make games, or at least Zelda games, they don't really hang too much on the idea of, okay, here is like one ancient dark tribe, and we're going to call them, I don't know, whatever you want to call them, and then we're going to carry them through the games. They don't really do that. What they like doing is kind of the way that the timeline works is kind of adding onto it and say like, oh, it could be, the interlopers, it could be, the Zonai, it could be anything. It keeps it open for debate. It keeps allows them to be flexible with how they tell their stories. What I like, and this is, you're gonna have to like do some stretching because I'm doing a lot of reaching right now. The Ouroboros, that's how you say it.
Yeah.
The circle dragon thing eating its own tail. I think there's two of them on the logo eating each other's tails. What I like about it, because it's a whole idea of like an infinity, the cycle of life and death and that sort of thing. In my head, that's kind of like a subtle way of indicating the cyclical nature of the whole Zelda cycle, which both works for like, oh yeah, there's always going to be a Link, there's always going to be a Zelda, there's always going to be a Ganon, but also, maybe subtly, it's Nintendo's way of indicating that they are going to subtly be a little more cyclical and call back to things in a subtle way. You have to do it subtly, because if you make this game and really earmark, oh yeah, it's going to have the Twilight, it's going to have all this, like, you want new stuff. If you're the average person on the street, you're interested in the new stuff. But the way that Breath of the Wild panned out is that it was surface, its own standalone, brand new. It's gonna splinter off from the timeline. It's its own like pocket universe or something of Zelda. Actually, there's a lot of Skyward Sword in there. There's lots of callbacks to previous Zelda games. So what you might find is that Tears of the Kingdom, I very nearly called it Breath of the Wild 2. I've got to get used to that. Tears of the Kingdom, basically, on the surface, will be very different. We'll have all this different iconography, the semblance of new characters, and this figure may well be a new character, or it could be Hylian, we don't know. But it may well, if you dig a little bit below the surface, you'll find that there are connections to Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, and, we're going dark, it could be Majora's Mask in there, that you could just have all of this Zelda lore just a little bit under the surface for anyone who is willing to do a bit of digging.
No, I definitely agree, because like when you do a bit of digging in Breath of the Wild itself, like you would find more and more stuff. When people say like, oh, there's not a lot of lore in Breath of the Wild, there's not a lot of story in Breath of the Wild, I'm like, it is there. It's just that the presentation needed work, but like there's a lot of story, there's a lot of stuff to find out within that game, and once you like dig up all of that lore, you find a very rich game in terms of like stuff that offers Zelda fans and then fans of the series that are just coming into Breath of the Wild. So taking that concept or taking that approach and turning it up to 11 for Tears of the Kingdom, 100% I believe in that, especially if they want to go off of another game, because like obviously the biggest game that you can find a lot of callbacks to in Breath of the Wild was Skyward Sword. If they were to continue that trend, it's like, hey, listen, we already did Skyward Sword in Breath of the Wild. Let's do another game in Tears of the Kingdom. What game? Twilight Princess, right? So I feel that will be a very good standing point, because I mean, like every Zelda game after Ocarina of Time that took place after Ocarina of Time had references to Ocarina of Time, right? That's like the standard, right? With Breath of the Wild, Skyward Sword, and then obviously tons of lore from Ocarina of Time. So for Tears of the Kingdom, having its game being sprinkled with concepts from a previous game, Twilight Princess, 100%. I feel like the whole idea of the interlopers, the Twilight, and what their history could be, what their ideologies could be, just like kind of came and went in that game, and I would love for that to be explored in Tears of the Kingdom. Because one thing I said on Twitter, and the people were like, oh, I don't see it. Twilight Princess as a game and as a way of life for the Twilight tribe themselves had a big focus on the whole animal motif, right? And we had that a bit in Breath of the Wild, and in Tears of the Kingdom, we're seeing that a little bit more when it comes to the dragons, when it comes to Link surfing on a bird type glider thing. And then the hieroglyphics on the ground that you see kind of look like animals. You know, if you guys play Yu-Gi-Oh, I get a big Earthbound Immortal type deal. If you guys know what it is, it's good. It's a good arc, bad archetype. But with all that being considered, I feel like, you know, the signs are definitely there. Now, Conrad, what do you think about Twilight Princess possibly being like a good beefy role within that of Tears of the Kingdom?
Oh yeah, I definitely see it as a possibility. Like, I'm not going to say straight out it is, because with Zelda, we all know until the game is out, we can be completely, and then I mean completely wrong. But I feel like what Breath of the Wild did was do callbacks to Skyward Sword and Ocarina of Time. What is the next game after that where Ganondorf appears? Twilight Princess. That is exactly what I think. But I also think that there's something else here, which I feel like has not been brought up that much, namely the theme of colors. Skyward Sword, that is the color red. That's the rise of Demise. He's getting revived, and he has the final laugh of that game. He also has the Demon Tribe returning, which came down on the ground. There you have it, the red layer. Then you have the surface, the kingdom, the blood of the goddess, and we all know the blood of royalty is blue, not red. So there you have it, blue royal blood, Zelda. Then finally we have sky, which is always tied to spirituality, the afterlife, as we can see from all sort of sides in real life as well. So you have hell, earth, and heaven. And I think that is exactly what the structure that they are building up towards here. And that the Twilight, if they made it back to Hyrule as a source of gratitude, ended up dying and are now spirits, possibly in the sky. And that could be what is going on and why we didn't see anything of them in Breath of the Wild. And it would also explain why they are, well, represented by the color green, because they are spirits. Just like Link is the manifestation of spirit of the hero, the color green.
That is a beautiful way to put it. My goodness, because like ever since Twilight Princess, once again, you know, we had that like whole idea of like color, you know, the green being tied to that of spirits. You know, you enter the Twilight realm and you don't have the proper protection, you become a spirit, it's the green. And that's the same exact motif that we see in Breath of the Wild, in which, you know, the fallen king of Hyrule, the champions, as they appear spirits, the same green, the same kind of espery flames are surrounding them to show that they're gone, they've been moved on into the next realm, whatnot. I would definitely like to see that explored a little bit more. And then, you know, the whole idea of color theory is completely spot on when it comes to, like, you know, Skyward Sword, the royal family's identity, you know, power, wisdom, courage, all that good jazz. So with that idea, you know, with Twilight Princess being, you know, possibly like a big role within that Tears of the Kingdom, I feel like it's what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say, like, confirmed is way too hard of a word. Like, it's not even implied, but I guess like safe to assume, like, if there's a word for that. But I'm definitely down for all of that. Now, before we get into, like, I know we're gonna get into a whole beefy section when we talk about the Zonai and whatnot, but before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the character, the hieroglyphics that we see in the beginning of the Tears of the Kingdom trailer. You know, we kind of spitballed a little bit. It's like, oh, is it Hylian? Is it a god? Is it someone else completely? I was thinking like, oh, the absolute first thing I saw, I thought when I saw it was like, oh, a heathen goddess, a goddess that was not supposed to be worshipped, some sort of antithesis to that of Hylian, whatever and whatnot, possibly being a demon goddess that Demise worship. Maybe this is the entity that gave Demise gear him, you know, because like that would mirror that of, you know, Link receiving not really receiving, but claiming the goddess sword that was built by the goddess Hylia that housed the Spirit 5. It could have been mirrored to that degree with Demise and whatever this entity is. Let's give the ball over to Rabbit Luigi first on that. So tell me, what was your first thought of seeing that new mysterious yet ominous entity, and you know, what are you leading in terms of new character? Goss Hylia, let me hear your thoughts.
I think the first impression, and it was the best impression so far, is that I have no idea, because I think if you start a trailer and then I don't know, there's just Ganon's face in hieroglyphics there, you think, oh, okay, you kind of know where they're going with it. You can kind of, you know, fill the blanks in yourself. You don't have to really worry about it so much. But I think the fact that it's not obvious who or what it is makes it, you know, the perfect way to open a trailer. My gut instinct has it coming down on like a Hylia sort of goddess kind of mirror of Zelda, who, you know, it makes sense by the final shot of the trailer.
Right.
But in the back of my head, I would love it if it's something way more sinister than that. Because like I forget who said it a while ago, the idea that the royal family have done terrible things in the past to you know, be where they are, and they have this like massive, terrifying skeleton in the closet that, you know, under certain circumstances has risen to the top for some reason, and that, you know, even Zelda's kind of stuck being in with it, basically. Even she has to be tied to this terrible thing. I have no idea what it could be, and obviously it's not Ganon, so it would have to be kind of a secondary antagonist or something, and we haven't seen it in a trailer, so it doesn't really hold much water. But the idea that actually the final shot, and to be honest, I didn't really see it first because I was kind of looking at the title, looking at the logo, but if you sort of look beyond it, it is a bit kind of, you know, that figure is very tall, and that kind of just even subconsciously makes you think, oh no. Oh, I don't really want to know what that is.
You
so,
don't like tall women? What you're saying?
Look, we don't know.
You don't like tall girls?
Lady Dimitrescu.
Oh man,
but it just subconsciously makes you think, oh no. So I don't know. It's just, I want it to be sinister and bad and
fear.
You know, it's obviously not Ganon. Ganon don't dress like that, but just something creeping. That's what I want.
You know, I've been saying, like, ever since the first trailer, and I'm like, I would love it, absolutely love it, if this character was like the true big bad beyond Ganondorf in Tears of the Kingdom. Like, imagine like Ganondorf, right? Like, you know, like I'm going off the rails and thinking that this could be like the demon goddess that is above Demise, that is the one that's handling the curse, the one that's like, okay, all right, new curse time, all right, Ganondorf, rise up. You know, that's like the one that's like, you know, controlling the puppet strings or whatnot, and that you beat Ganondorf at the end of the game, and then like she comes out and she's gigantic, and you're like, oh, here we go. You know, like, I would love if this was like the true big bad, but I don't know if Nintendo would be that ballsy in which show in you know, possibly showing off the big bad of, you know, Tears of the Kingdom like this, like 8 months out or whatnot. Because I mean, obviously, when you think Ganondorf or Ganon, the final boss of the game, maybe there's a secret boss or whatever. And like the only other time I feel Nintendo kind of like blindsided us a little bit was Four Swords Adventures, in which, you know, we played the game, we beat the game, not beat the game, but we get to the end, and it's Vati, right? Okay, all right, yeah, Four Swords Adventures makes sense, Vati, whatever. But when we beat Vati, Ganon shows up. We're like, oh yeah, okay, got it. Well, like, I would love for a situation like that again in Tears of the Kingdom, in which Ganondorf, like, he comes out of here, you know, absolutely dismantles you, but you're somehow able to beat him. Kind of like in Naruto, when you beat Madara, but then after Madara, it turns out, what was her name?
I'm watching the show for the first time. I'm not listening.
Okay. Oh yeah. All right. All right. Then chat. You know. I'm not gonna say the name, but you know what I'm talking about. All right.
If you know, you know.
Yeah.
That was risky.
All right. So so quick palate cleanse. Let's throw it over to Misclick then. All right. So Misclick, I know you spoke a bit about it earlier in the stream, but let's dive a little bit more directly into that. Where are you leaning towards? You know, good guy, bad guy? Is she the arm? Is it big bad? What are you thinking?
I mean, I think for me, it could be, again, another bait and switch. It could be something exactly along the lines of, this is someone who earns our trust. I don't know, like when I was looking at the hieroglyphics, you know, I was like seeing arm jewelry and stuff. So I was like, maybe this is the hand that is on Ganon. Maybe this is the person or thing or whatever, you know, they identify as, that, you know, this is the individual who we have to thank for, you know, Ganon maybe didn't die, didn't get defeated, maybe because something happened, you know, for evil to be vanquished. It was kind of just, you know, temporarily like duct taped away in the closet, just throw him in there, you know, like, oh god.
That'll do for
It's
now.
like, we can't keep him down. Just like throw him in there somewhere.
Yeah,
Flex tape.
you just put the duct tape on the leak, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess I kind of thought of it as, you know, it could be something, you know, along the lines even of this is the entity or the being that locked it away. It's had a relationship with the royal family before, or the hieroglyphics again could be telling of present of this coming journey. You know what I mean? It doesn't necessarily have to tell of the past. It could be of the coming. So yeah, I don't know. I think, again, like I said, as long as we come to love them or come to love and then be betrayed, I think there's, it sounds horrible because we hate betrayal in real life, but for some reason, like the tragedy of a betrayal, if it's done right, or that, you know, that moment of, oh my God, my reality is shattered, in art is beautiful.
It's potent.
And
It's super potent.
yeah, if it's handled very well. But again, I think the Zelda team also at the same time knows that we're going to be running a million different directions. So, you know, I feel like for the most part, for me, I feel like it's a being that was endowed an insane amount of responsibility. And they probably have felt the weight of that responsibility, much like Zelda, and whether or not Zelda, if we get a chance to see her maybe relate to the character of, you know, this is the weight of my responsibility, I think that'd be really cool. I don't know. I just think when I just see like that, the hands, you know, intertwined, it's almost like a ceremony. If it's not like a marriage, you know, it's of a partnership. Again, it's like that Rocky meme. Where it's just, again, whether we get betrayed by that or not, like maybe they're like, help, you know, like the Ganon's breaking free, you know, we gotta fix this, like let's team up together, here's my hand, you know, blah blah blah, and then at the end it's like, yeah, but now the power's for me, you know. So it's like it could be multiple things. I don't know. I kind of made this to the correlation of like, oh, this is the hand that we've seen. But again, it's hard to tell with hieroglyphics, you know. It's kind of crazy, like when you think about like in real life how people make it their job to like study hieroglyphics and put it with correlation of obviously the real life tangible artifacts we can find in the real world, but the fact that they have to pull all of these pieces together. Obviously Zelda we have a lot less to work with, but I don't know, it's kind of cool to like look at small elements. And I know we didn't really mention earlier, but in regards to like Midna and stuff like that, like also like she does have like those 2 dragons on her cloak as well.
Yep. Yep.
So it just, for me, it's like the fact that she's, you know, this whether it's a guy or girl, you know, the fact that they're taller, it does remind me of that Midna relationship, because it's like she, you know, she's that sassy, spunky, you know, imp form for so long, and then when you first see her in her true form, you're like, dang girl, you got downgraded real hard and you've been real pissed about it, you know what I mean? So
you're like, yes,
so you're mad at everything.
yes.
Yeah, like I don't know, I'm excited. So whether or not it's good or bad, I just want that relationship or the story of that relationship to feel authentic and to feel like weight behind it. You know, it's not just a character that's forgettable, because that's one thing that Zelda does right, is for the most part, like the characters are pretty memorable. You know, they have some sort of impact on the main character or on the side characters. So yeah, like I remember the first time I saw Impa from Skyward Sword, I was like, dang man, like I don't know how I feel about this Impa, because Ocarina of Time Impa still has a really special place in my heart.
Oh yeah.
But like just the relationship, the weight she had with Zelda pleading for her to come back to her time, and she's like, we'll meet again soon.
Oh,
like,
why are you saying that? It hurts.
Don't
It
worry.
hurts. It hurts.
Yeah. That's what I'm hoping for, is relationships like that, you know.
We might get one. Here's hoping that that entity is a good guy, because, you know, considering going back to what you guys were saying about the hieroglyphics and how big, you know, that entity is compared to that of what we assume to be Zelda, you know, it had me thinking from the first Breath of the Wild trailer where we see the hand save Link, and then when you compare the size of that hand to Link's arm, I feel like it's a very similar comparison scale to what we see in the hieroglyphics in this trailer. So I mean, like,
I was going to say, I've just brought the trailer. the actual shot you see of them like linking the arms, you've seen how massive that hand is. The size of the thumb is huge.
That's reminding me of that video of Andre the Giant being interviewed, and he's like, "Oh, look how big his hand is!" And just like puts his whole hand on the interviewer, just like, oh man. But considering all of that, I'm gonna throw over to Conrad now on what do you think about this entity being friend, foe, someone we know, or a completely new character? What are you thinking?
Never get attached to the companions in Zelda.
No,
they will break your heart.
Like, yeah, they all.
It's a therapy session, man.
Yeah.
They all.
No,
they all do.
I'm not saying it's gonna be evil or.
Wow,
or
no wait,
like
let me stop you right now, Conrad. Let me stop you really quick. I'm actually like going through my head like in like rapid memory right now, and yeah, they all do. Like Navi, Taro, Minda, the King of Red Lions, Fi. Like, no, I don't like it.
Yeah.
All right,
that's
continue.
Get ready for it. Get ready, and especially with Hidemaru Fujibayashi. Like, let's remember who's writing this game.
Yeah,
this is the guy who's adding meaning to Zelda ever since he took over as director of the franchise. I'm telling you, Breath of the Wild was the game that they said, no, we need to focus on gameplay. This is the game where they are going to say, go wild. Literally.
Yeah, literally.
I know the previous title of the game we made was Breath of the Wild, but this time go wild with the story because we need this. This might be the end and the great culmination of what this entire trilogy has been building up to. Because you have Skyward Sword, the beginning, Breath of the Wild, the mid, and then this Tears of the Kingdom, the end.
I don't want it to end. I don't want it to end.
I know, but the thing about cycles.
Right.
Death and then rebirth afterwards.
Man, we're about to hit the universe reset button. It's like, okay, Zelda's anew now.
This is how the Zelda franchise goes on forever. Because sooner or later, it has to happen. They can't just continue this line forever. Because it's just going to run dry. No, it's going to run dry. That's the thing.
I mean, I do agree with Conrad a little bit. And I've said this for a while. In the sense of, Zelda will have to reach a point. For me, like when you hear that first line in Breath of the Wild where everybody got confused of like, he's using up all of his hatred, all of his power, all of his malice before he can reincarnate or like turn into his human form. A lot of people are like, oh my God, is this the end of it? And then it got a lot of people thinking, oh my God, what if this was the end? You know what I mean? And some people are always like, oh, maybe it's demise, maybe it's demise. For me personally, I have the thought of like, if demise comes back, he's used literally everything of the hatred cycle to come back. And that would be a cool end for me. Like you see him again. The Link we're playing as doesn't recognize him. Fi recognizes him. She's like, oh, freaking shit, And then it's like, you as the player, you're like, I know that guy. It's the same pecs. They're huge.
Jeez.
But like the thing is like, again, with what Conrad said, and it makes sense too. Maybe they do it along the timeline of the Zelda team and like whoever's directing, like whoever's physically still alive to this day. It would be better for the series to go out while it's golden and have it with a pretty bow and everything makes sense than to just dry out, to have it run on too long, to have it feel like Disney Plus. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm throwing the shade out there. It's better that it ends while it's still solid than to let it run dry.
I'm not suggesting that the franchise ends.
What?
No, I don't suggest that the franchise ends. I'm just talking about a new beginning. A new storyline, like a reboot.
Classifies as what do you mean? What classifies as a new beginning?
A new beginning,
new villain, or
new villain. A completely new
for the cycle to end.
For the cycle
premise of Zelda end, because to me that's running dry. To me, that is like, if that completely changed and it didn't make sense, they would have to handle that in the most perfect way possible for the literal Triforce to not be its main premise again. You know what I mean?
All right, let's continue the adult timeline after Spirit Tracks.
I always felt like Breath of the Wild was the beginning of a new quote-unquote timeline.
Yeah.
I felt like that was the reboot that the series was going for.
I have a really interesting thought that like literally creeped into my head just now when you guys were talking about like new beginnings, the end of the cycle or whatnot. What if this happens like throughout and then like at a certain point in the game and then throughout, because everyone, their mamas are clamoring for, all right, yeah, come on guys, take away the curse from Ganondorf, make him good, free him from the curse, free him from the curse. A lot of people really don't understand that Ganondorf is born from it. It's not like he was born as a baby and then the curse is just like, okay, I select this child. No, he's the curse incarnate. That's him, right?
Okay,
but
so my question is, where did it say the curse of hatred was specifically bound to a specific race? That's my question, because I think for me, the way to freshen it up is if you had a different race that had the hatred, like the spirit of the hero, right? Spirit of the hero could be any hero that the spirit chooses, right? That doesn't necessarily bound. The only one that is bound to a specific race or family is the blood of the goddess Hylia.
Right.
So for me, if we want to switch it up, right, you keep the Triforce in, you keep the whole premise, but, and this is one of the theories that seems like it's not going to come true, but when Breath of the Wild 2, you know, trailers first came out, I was like, oh my god, what if this is the first time that we've thought this whole time that maybe the bad guy wasn't necessarily the Gerudo like we thought, but maybe just somehow he was the vessel for the malice, but he wasn't the perpetrator. Like, what if he was the hero like we saw in you know, the red-headed what if he was the skeleton in the closet because he was the hero but ended up sacrificing himself, you know, for whatever reason, to be the vessel? Like, it's just, you know, his body, his vessel. The malice is, you know, animating the body, but it's not necessarily the hero anymore. Like, the body is dead and decaying and dying.
I have two ideas pertaining to that specifically. One, the most recent trailer for Tears of the Kingdom definitely insinuates something in that line of thinking, in which you know, the whole idea of like Zelda being sacrificed and whatnot. Like, what if that's not really Zelda? And then the fact that the malice was coming after whoever this person was. Like, what if? And I've been saying this since I first saw the trailer. What if, like, way back in the annals of history, which pertains to the whole idea of a Tears of the Kingdom, in which one of the original sins that the royal family or the Sheikah did is in which when the Curse of Demise first activated long ago after Demise, it was that curse was originally like afflicted to another tribe, in which it was like, oh, the curse manifested as a Hylian, or the curse manifested as a Sheikah, and then they didn't like that, so then they're all like, okay, listen, how about nah, we're gonna have to put this curse on another tribe, the Gerudos, let's do that, right? And then that could be a whole idea, you know, pertaining of a sin of the royal family, Tears of the Kingdom, and whatnot. And then going back to the original statement that I was saying about like how Ganondorf literally is the curse, and that how people really want him to be, you know, redeemed, or they want him to be, you know, good or whatever. What if there's a massive plot point in Tears of the Kingdom, like either in the beginning, halfway throughout the game, or just getting really potent towards the end, in which Demise is able to come back as Demise, right? And that like everything that makes, you know, Ganondorf like, you know, evil, that mouse or whatever, was stripped from him, and that Demise and Ganondorf were both able to like coexist at that point towards the end of the game, in which, you know, Ganondorf actually becomes an ally, yada yada yada. And at the end of the game, Demise is defeated, and then the goddess is there, and like, oh, she's helping too, or whatever. And then the four of y'all there, and then Demise is finally defeated. Like, no more reincarnation, no more absorbed into the Master Sword hanky-panky bullshit, none of that, right? He is just gone. And then everyone's like, celebrates, like, we did it. But then Ganondorf slowly starts to crumble away, right? And then like Link is like, what's going on? We freed you from the curse. And then like the goddess explains, like, you don't understand. The whole reason why Ganondorf exists in the first place is because of the curse. Now that Demise is defeated, you know, Ganondorf technically can't exist. And then Ganondorf, like, you know, he's like, thank you for allowing me to pass on. Like, thank you for finally allowing me to pass on as something other than a monster. And then that's how they break the cycle and start Zelda anew. Nintendo, please! I'm sorry.
That'd be rough.
Yeah. I would love that. I would cry.
It's a good plot twist, and I think we really need a plot twist after not having one in Breath of the Wild. I think that is the key point here, that we want something that turns our expectations 180 degrees around. And I think that is how you make this game stand out from Breath of the Wild and make it memorable outside of gameplay and the new layers and so on. Like, if you can do that and surpass expectations, the whole idea of the Breath of the Wild saga is to challenge established conventions.
Exactly.
So maybe that is exactly what they're going for.
Yep.
I would love that. Like, because, you know, a lot of people, like, when it comes to Zelda games development throughout, you know, the series, Nintendo always takes it upon themselves to challenge themselves in creating the next Zelda, but also taking in a point of criticism that they hold to heart that goes into development. You know, case in point, Ocarina of Time went into Majora's Mask because, you know, Ocarina of Time did really well. But then after Majora's Mask, Nintendo thought, hey, listen, this art style is exhausted, because apparently, like, when they were first developing the next game, console game after that, they were using the Ocarina of Time art style again. But they're like, Majora's Mask exhausted that. Let's do something different, right? Which led to Wind Waker's art style. Wind Waker's art style didn't really sit well with a lot of people, and then Nintendo's like, okay, let's make something darker looking. All right, they did Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess was like, and then, you know, a lot of y'all weren't there in 2006, and you guys tried to rewrite history, but I was there. When Twilight Princess came out, people loved it, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people got tired of it because it was literally like Ocarina of Time 2.0, but easier, where like a ton of the puzzles were lifted from Ocarina of Time. And then a lot of people were like, oh, Zelda's getting too formulaic in Twilight Princess. And then Nintendo took that to heart and made Skyward Sword, which changed up a lot of things and took a page from Metroid and ran with it. Sure, it was very
wanted open world.
Exactly, it was too linear, and then everybody wanted open world. Led to Breath of the Wild. Right?
Because you remember it came out at the same time as Skyrim. And everybody was like, if only it was Skyrim. And then the Game of the Year debate was all about Skyrim. And then Breath of the Wild.
And then Breath of the Wild. So, like, continuing to rethink those conventions and whatnot is something I feel like it's been good for The Legend of Zelda ever since they moved away from Twilight Princess in terms of the Zelda formula. So I would love to be surprised over and over and over again, because Breath of the Wild, like, you know, lack of a better term, it was really a breath of fresh air for me. I'm like, okay, Breath of the Wild, let's see what you got. I sat down, played this game, I'm like, yo, this is magical. I never thought my favorite series would like wow me that hard like Breath of the Wild did, and I feel Tears of the Kingdom is gonna do that. Now, like, going off that energy, we have two more subjects before we end it off here. Not end it off here, but end off this chat. Next subject.
Do you mind if I interject?
No, go for it. Go for it. Yeah, go right. Power Rangers.
I did not talk about my thoughts on the.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, my bad. All right, go for it.
It's all good. So
he hates you.
Wow. My hatred never perishes. So I definitely do fall into camp like, oh, it's Hylia. What's interesting about Breath of the Wild is, especially with this trailer, there suddenly is a ton of like animals associated with the history. You know, the Zonai, they associate virtues of the Triforce, which is a very sacred relic, as, you know, the
sacred relic.
Dragon. Yeah, the owl dragon and
Boar.
Boar.
Yeah.
And so I think it's highly possible that the figure is they're either like their depiction of what Hylia would look like, because they go off the whole animal motif. And also it could be a mask, so it could be just like some sort of sacred outfit or something. And obviously it's surrounded by the 7 tiers, and we all know like 7 sages. That's, you know, connection a lot of people make.
Right.
But something else that's really interesting is, while we don't have sages in Breath of the Wild, the first group that comes to mind is the Gerudo Heroines. Now it's interesting because we have 7 tiers, and then 7 heroines, and on the Gerudo text translates directly to 7 sages in the Wasteland. But we're also told of an 8th heroine. So there always is the possibility that maybe this figure is connected to that 8th that was wiped from history. Who knows? I just think that's kind of, an interesting observation.
But also to add on to that, NBC, a lot of people are like, oh, we have 7 tiers, right? And we do have 7 tiers when we first see that entity,
first image.
Right? The first image, but in the
And then
second,
we have 2 more.
We have,
Yeah.
I don't want to say 2 more. I want to say 1 more, adding on to the tier that's above the lady. So we might have 8. Because people can perceive that as 9. But I perceive that as 1 more being added to the one that's on top from the first image. Right? So that could be 8 pertaining to that. Because a lot of people have been bringing up the 7 heroines from the Gerudo tribe. And I'm like, that's a very valid thing. And then I was talking to a friend of mine about that, where the lost 8 heroine, she was disarmed because her sword is all the way in
True.
Another area. Right? So that could be part of the legend in which, this 8th mysterious heroine that was disarmed, that her weapon was gone. Why? There could be some really hanky-panky lore to that. So,
well, it looks as if so obviously the 8th heroine, it's as if both of them were carved completely somewhere else. Like the 8th heroine, when you look at it, it's still carved into the mountain. And also the sword is still attached to the mountain. So it's like they were working on it and all of a sudden they stopped. And that's why she's separated from the sword, because that statue never got completed for some reason.
Right.
Another thing that's kind of interesting is when I look at the trailer, the stone color does remind me of Gerudo stone.
Yep.
Especially, and Arbiter's grounds. I'm pretty sure all Gerudo carvings, the desert, it just has that reddish, I guess, orangey
And you know what's a great reference to that? In Ocarina of Time, when they're showing off the creation of the world, when Din used a strong flaming arts to cultivate the red earth, what did they show to represent that? Gerudo's Valley.
Gerudo Valley. Yeah, and so it just makes me think that these could have been carved by the Gerudo, so this could be a Gerudo side of the history. We'll just have to wait and see.
Oh, please. I would love that. So going off the rails on that type of excitement, we're going to go into our final 2 subjects on that, on the stream, is I want to hear you guys' thoughts on what is the most exciting thing you're looking forward to now that we know, everything we know so far from all the trailers of Tears of the King. What's the most exciting thing you're looking forward to when it comes to this game, which is coming out in May? And I would like to tell everyone here that I think it's a good idea for you to possibly looking into PAX East next year, because PAX is happening in March and the game's coming out in May, and it could be possible Nintendo's gonna have a big ass booth there in which we could play the game. So consider that. I'm gonna throw it back to NBC for that one. I'm gonna have you start. What's the most exciting thing you're looking forward to this game?
Making theories. Oh man, I don't know. I don't know what particular thing would excite me the most. I guess I'm just interested in seeing how they're gonna refresh this overworld exploration. And I know Conrad talks a lot about this, and I absolutely agree. I want to see exploration in the sky, on the surface, but more importantly, I do want to see underground stuff.
It's funny how we got that idea from the first trailer and it has yet to be revisited again in another. I mean, sure, if you want to count the beginning of the second trailer, yeah, but I do want to go underground, like catacombs. Something that is giving me a lot of hope is seeing that so many islands are being ripped out from the land and then start floating up. That, I don't know about y'all, but that gives me the hope for the return of grottos.
Well, I was thinking, because a lot of people have already noticed how in the second trailer there was no Deku Tree, and it makes me think, are there parts of Hyrule that have become floating islands? There's one shot in the most recent trailer where Link is climbing that tree root, and the particles in the background, it looks like the same atmosphere as the Lost Woods. And it would be kind of cool if we had 2 different realms, the realm with some floating islands over Hyrule, but then also some other realm where maybe the floating islands over Hyrule came from here, but we're still going to explore that a separate realm. But we'll just have to wait and see.
Right. And I'm so at first, I am not gonna lie. At first, when I saw the whole concept of exploring the skies of Hyrule in the second trailer, I'm like, okay, cool. This seems good, but how how big can this explorable area truly be? How far can Nintendo take it? But then after seeing the last trailer with the Tears of the Kingdom trailer and seeing that gigantic massive land, which seems to be over the Lunara Akala region, that was massive. And I'm like, okay, District 9, let's get it. That got my confidence up the roof where I'm like, okay, now there's gonna be big chunks in the sky, and I'm all here for it.
Well, if they did raise some parts of the surface, then that could open up entrances to underground areas and do like two things at once, which, you know.
Definitely. I feel like that's 100% accurate in that line of thinking. Now, I'm going to throw the ball over to Conrad, and I'm going to ask you, what's the most exciting thing you're looking forward to when it comes to this game?
One is not going to E3 next year because it's 1 month after the game is out.
Oh, so yeah, not going to E3, yep.
That's a lot of money saved.
Yeah.
But most of all, I want to see this trilogy completed. I want to see what was established in Skyward Sword, the beginning of the end in Breath of the Wild, because the kingdom is dead. We see that there's something returning. And first it was Calamity Ganon, now it's Ganondorf, and I have a feeling that behind that again is the third and final entity hiding Demise. I want to see that culmination. I want them to return back to the origin point and create this massive battle that is going to be peak Zelda like never before. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to experience, and that's what I'm looking the most forward to, because this is what they're hinting with every of these trailers. It's like they're hinting towards the beginning, the Trinity, and the destiny that was established with the demon, the goddess, and the spirit of the hero.
Man, her chosen knight, just like, I love Zelda. Like, I'm so excited for this game. Like, Tears of the Kingdom is gonna make me feel a different way, and I'm like, we have been waiting 6 years for this, but I feel like the wait is gonna be very, very worth it. All right, I'm gonna throw it over to Rabbit now. What is the thing that excites you the most when it comes to this game, Tears of the Kingdom? Let me hear your thoughts.
Just sort of picking up what NBC was saying about the Sky Islands and the possibility of exploring like catacombs and underground. I think what I'm most excited about is how the sky relates to the overworld, and the possibility of, if these islands have risen out of the surface of Hyrule, have they then created a crater and therefore possibly a cave network where the, you know, let's say the Lost Woods is just lifted off the ground. There's going to be a giant crater and possibly a bunch of cave networks. What you could find is all these little sky islands, and there may be some small ones, there may be some absolutely massive ones. Maybe on the surface it's reflected by larger craters, which are like more important areas, larger network of caves, or maybe like little small ones that have like little optional challenges. I don't know. You could do anything with that, but I want to see in my head how it all connects. I think I keep coming back to, and there's various reasons why this is the case, but this has been developed since Breath of the Wild 1 came out, because it was mentioned as they originally wanted to expand it as part of some DLC, and then they realized, oh, hang on, we're kind of redesigning the game here, we can't really release that as DLC, so we'll just make a sequel. So in my head, you know, there's you know, a year or two's discrepancy because of COVID, but they've spent a lot of time on this game, and you can see comparisons. Shout out to my boy Zeltic here, because he did a whole comparison video of the second trailer, where he said like, oh, you know what, if you find this area from the second trailer in Breath of the Wild, it's not actually a lot different. So in my head, where's the years gone? Where's the dev time gone? I'm not saying that they've been lazy for 5 years, but I'm saying they've done a lot to this game that's not immediately obvious.
Well, so also, where do the islands come from?
Exactly. Yeah. So like, there's got to be a lot of effort put into these islands for how they connect to, I guess figuratively, they don't literally, how they connect to the overworld, and possibly if there's anything underneath there, which, you know, I'd love to explore some caves. You could do some really crazy things with those caves. So, you know, if anyone's interested in the idea of traditional Zelda dungeons, and if you want to go really traditional, then yeah, you have a cave where, you know, Lost Woods used to be, where, you know, the Korok Forest used to be. Yeah, let's put like a forest cave dungeon in there. Screw it, you know, it'll be fun. So that's the relationship that I want to see expanded in some way.
Because, like, I love how you brought up dungeons, because I really think, which is also going to pertain to the last subject of this, discussion. I really truly believe that we might get both sky dungeons and underground dungeons. Like there's gonna be
Amazing.
one of each, and I would love to see like the comparison contrast of how like each one is tackled, because like if like these cave networks are going to be huge like y'all are saying, then they have to put something big down there. And of course it was hinted at in the first Tears of the Kingdom trailer, and then we see those big structures in the second and the last Tears of the Kingdom trailer in the distance, and I'm like, those have to be dungeons. I mean, what are those? Those are gigantic. Those are buildings. Like, it has to be a dungeon. But now throwing it over to Nikljj, what is the most exciting thing that you are perceiving from Tears of the Kingdom that gets you like really hyped for this game that's coming out in May?
I know, man. I think it's gotta be, I want to see exactly how much time has passed since Breath of the Wild, how it's connecting, just because we've held on to this story. We've held on to this game for so long. You know, it's been, you know, over half a decade at this point, you know, of us having Breath of the Wild being, you know, like our latest biggest Zelda game. And so like seeing how it picks up, I don't know, it's gonna feel like, you know, waiting for like the next season of a show you've just been waiting for forever, and it comes out and it's just like, like this is where we've picked up. Like for specifically Zelda, her relationship to Link, you know, how do they interact, what's their relationship like, even if it's only for 30 seconds before she falls. But then also I'm hoping, I'm curious to see what we're going to be doing with the Master Sword. Like,
oh yeah,
because, you know, this whole time poor Fi is like half corroded. Like, does she feel pain? Can she feel pain, you know, in that sword? You know, like, are we going to see her again? Is this the this can't be the retirement of the Master Sword. Like, what is the importance? Literally, is this the marriage of the new technology to the Master Sword? Because, you know, like, the Master Sword is half and half in that logo, you know, of half Master Sword and then half whatever
blueprint,
other magic or technology it is. So I think for me it's kind of finding out, obviously the main premise, but just Zelda's relationship to Link, the Master Sword's relationship to Link. Are we seeing Fi again? Zelda said she can't hear the voice inside the sword anymore. Maybe it's because the voice isn't for her anymore. Like, maybe Link, you know, like, I don't know. Like, and it's just, there's a lot there that I hope we get to see. And if we don't, I understand, because there's probably more important tales they want to tell. But I don't know. I would like to see how we're either going to fix the Master Sword or learn to live with it. So
definitely, that's good.
Yeah, sorry. Regarding the Sheikah tech, well, like, I guess whatever new technology we use to like fix the Master Sword or something. One of my favorite weapons set in the entire game is the Royal Guard's gear, because at surface value there isn't much about it, but when you read the description, specifically I think of the regular sword, it mentions that it's like, I think it's like a replica of...
They try to replicate the Master Sword.
Yeah, they try to... so they tried to use this divine technology, but they break easily, so perhaps it just shows how, like, a weapon like that can't handle that power. But they have tried to do that in the past, which is very interesting.
Man, like, it's especially considering that, like, you know, the Master Sword is in a state that we thought we never could imagine it to be. Yeah. Right, so it's gonna be like, and it's like up, the ante has been upped since Breath of the Wild. Like, we've seen it damaged in Breath of the Wild. I'm like, I didn't even know this thing could be even damaged, and now it's broken clean in half in Tears of the Kingdom. Like, bro, what's going on, right? Yeah. So once again, challenging what we know are conventions of Zelda and whatnot. So it's gonna be really interesting to see us take that journey and possibly restoring it or building it anew. And that's something I feel is gonna be really cool, a very big focal point within the game itself. It's not like, we have to find the Master Sword in Breath of the Wild. It's like, no, we're gonna have it, but it's gonna be busted. So like, now we have to repair it or whatnot. Now going into the final subject of our discussion here on the Fifth Dimension, going off the excitement and going off of what we can expect from Tears of the Kingdom, I'm gonna ask y'all each one question when it comes to what is one thing, and you may have like answered it right throughout the discussion, but I want you guys to like go into it a little bit more. What is one thing from past Zelda games that wasn't in Breath of the Wild that you want to see return in Tears of the Kingdom? All right, so for that one, I'm going to throw it over to Nikljj first.
I think for me the biggest thing, I loved Breath of the Wild. I just, and it's probably not gonna happen. I don't know. Just from the trailers itself, it doesn't really seem like it. I want more personality to Link back. It's more of like a writing thing, just because like my favorite Link, I love Skyward Sword Link. He's so expressive. Like, you know, Wind Waker Link was really expressive too. Twilight Princess had expressions of his own, but it's just like Skyward Sword, you know, just had such.
He was very animated.
Expression. Yeah. And Breath of the Wild in comparison, I wanted more story in general with Breath of the Wild, but I understand why they left it so open-ended. You could unlock all the cutscenes that you wanted, or you can unlock none of them and then just go straight to the castle. And I like the fact that they left it like that. But for me, I do miss that story that really drives you through. So I'm just hoping for, I guess, outside of the personality of Link, it's just I am hoping for more of like a cohesive story where I'm okay if it gives us less build your own skeleton feeling, and instead, like, you know, this is the important story. This is what we want to tell you. This is the tale. And like I'm okay if we lose a little bit of that freedom again, you know, for that more traditional experience.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I love the fact that people got to play Breath of the Wild however they wanted, but there's just something about it where someone's like, oh,
you want that again? Go back and play Breath of the Wild. Like,
yeah, exactly. But some people, I remember talking to them the first time, they're like, oh, so that's what happened in the story? And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, oh yeah, like those were important.
I didn't do it.
I didn't need to. And I was like, you didn't do the memories. And they're like, no, I just did like the divine beasts and heard the people talk, and then I went. And I was like, oh, my heart, it hurts.
The horror.
But they can play however they want, you know?
Right.
So like that's that game. And again, people always ask like, if you had to pick like a favorite Zelda forever, and it's like every Zelda is so different for their different draws, like what the game is designed around. So for me, I don't know what the full draw is other than the arm.
Yeah.
Tears of the Kingdom would be, but I would like that story back. So
definitely. That's a great one to think to talk about. But thank you so much for that idea. But let's go over to the next idea for NBC. What is one thing that you want from a past Zelda game that wasn't in Breath of the Wild to return in Tears of the Kingdom?
You know, the way they presented the story was like unique and very interesting in Breath of the Wild, and it makes sense that they would kind of have to do it with past memories, because like a lot of the story is in the past. Mm-hmm. But that's because of how much they wanted you to, you know, be able to play it however you want. They had to have the whole chronological narrative in cutscenes, like, oh, so this already happened. This way, this is how we give the player the story while also letting them, you know, play however they want. And I guess one thing I just would like to see a bit more of a concrete story that does follow a bit more of a linear path. You can still have like the open world. One example I absolutely love bringing up is Red Dead Redemption 2, because in Red Dead Redemption 2, the story plays out where there's all these sub-chapters, and a lot of them you can play in whatever order, and the conclusion to that chapter only happens once you complete said sub-chapters. It doesn't really matter what order you complete them in a lot of cases. It's just once you get them all done, you get to play the finale chapter. And in some cases, it doesn't apply to what happens in the main chapter, but with others, it ends up actually having, you know, an interaction you might have with a character. One of these sub-chapters is brought up in the final conclusion. And I think something like that would be really cool for Tears of the Kingdom.
And, you know, funny how you brought that up. Yeah. They did say that, you know, they were looking a lot at Red Dead 2 for this game.
Exactly, yeah. And I guess another thing is, it's always good to leave a game with questions. You don't want everything answered, because it's really great to like think about, oh, I wonder what this could mean. And a lot of Breath of the Wild stuff is found through just exploring. But in some ways, I feel like Breath of the Wild just leaves way too many questions. There are some things that they could have sort of answered with some more, I guess, exploration or something. So I'm hoping that there is a bit more of a narrative for this game. Because I feel like there is a way you could, you know, blend the freedom with still having a very concrete story.
Now, I definitely agree, and I feel that, maybe like a good chunk of those 6 years was Nintendo trying to figure that out. And here's hoping, because, that was definitely one big valid criticism for Breath of the Wild. I'm not saying the game didn't have a story. A lot of people was like, it didn't have a story. Like, it did. It's just the presentation was bad.
Exactly, it's the presentation, yeah.
Right, that's why totally I agree 100% for that. So I would definitely love that. Now, throwing it over to Rabbit Luigi, what is one thing from a past Zelda game that wasn't in Breath of the Wild you want to see in Tears of the Kingdom?
So I don't want to do self-promotion quite yet, but I did actually talk about this recently on my YouTube channel. But something I forgot. This is a fun little thing. Something I forgot to mention in there, which I literally remembered about 10 minutes ago. So I'm very glad you asked this question. I agree on the story. So basically, yes, Breath of the Wild has a story. Not conveyed in the best way, because it doesn't really vibe well with how the average person approaches their game. The gameplay is so dominant that you don't think, you know what, I'm going to stop beating up the goblins and I'm going to go, look at this cutscene. It's like, no, I'm having fun. I'm going to keep doing this. So I agree. I'm going to dig down a little bit deeper on that and go a bit more specific, because the thing I've just remembered, and it's something that I've wanted for a long time, and actually, when I first played the game, I didn't just go straight to I tried to do everything and then go to Ganon. So the one thing I'd want is for Ganon to have spoken dialogue. Because as much as, I don't even want to say as much as I love how Ganon is portrayed in the game, because the first fight with him, it's okay, it's all right. Second one, don't even want to talk about it, because that is a joke. But
it's a final stretch boss fight, you guys. Like, there's better ways to do it. Play Paper Mario's Sticker Star.
Yeah, there's a million ways better to do it than that. But basically, the one thing, and I don't think this will be the only thing you could do which will elevate the story, but it'll be a very easy way of doing it, is to make Ganondorf, I guess, a human. Make him not Beast Ganon or, weird Malice Ganon, where he's like bits of Sheikah and that sort of stuff. No, actually give him a humanoid form. And we kind of seem to be heading in that direction anyways, a little bit, needs to get some skin. But you're getting in that direction. I want him to, A, have a conversation with someone, and B, I guess it's kind of part of the territory, have voice acting. Because,
no, 100%. I will actually be disappointed if Ganondorf did not have voice acting in Tears of the Kingdom.
I feel like you have to do that.
I feel like Link would be the only one that we could see justified as not having a voice. I really
easily,
You would have a hard time convincing people that, But I think
keep him like a mummy the whole game. I'm like, bro, really?
Yeah, if you want an easy way of distinguishing the difference between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, rather than just have, in the middle of the map is this terrible thing that's happening, trust me. No, actually have like a consistent threat who's around, who is a person who can convey their thoughts and their motives, rather than just a weird mess of parts that you fight at the end. So that's my one thing.
That's what I love about Wind Waker, Ganondorf.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah,
because he has this whole talk before he confronts the hero, and even then he's like, I'm not, like, he has some sort of, I guess, emotions or something, because he's like, I'm not going to kill you.
Morality,
he just wanted the peace. But then when the kingdom sinks, he then goes bad mode, and he pulls out his hey, I'm sorry, the way he pulls out those double blades is smooth before the fight.
Right there.
Allow me to show you.
But I like how you sugarcoat it. It's like before he confronts the hero, it's like, no, it's okay. Before he beats the living daylights out of Link. Yeah, we all saw it.
This punches the face. Oh man.
Man, and it's funny, when I replayed that scene, I thought, like, here's the thing. I thought Ganondorf just went full, like, fucko mode and just did, like, 3 massive blows to Link's head. But when I replayed that scene, I'm like, no, he's a lot smarter than that. When he did the first 2 punches, he actually punched away Link's shield. He punched the Master Sword out of his hand, and then did the head blow. I'm like, oh man, look at you! You play Fallout? Okay, gotcha. Like,
he's not doing tennis. He doesn't do tennis either. He's learning,
right? Now, I honestly, like, when I was growing up, I honestly thought he did just 3 blows to Link's head. Like, yo, how's Link gonna block that? Like, Ganondorf is like, literally like 8 feet taller than you, but okay. Now, throwing it over to last but not least, Conrad. What is one aspect that was not in Breath of the Wild that you want to see return from a past Zelda game into Tears of the Kingdom?
Well, I think we all agree. I agree with all of the notions that have come up so far. A good story is very important. Personality. I can't wait until we see the first trailer with voice acting.
It's gonna be good.
Return of voice acting. That's very important. But most of all, for me, as all Zelda fans, dungeons. That is literally the definition of Zelda for me. It's a dungeon crawler. And if there's a game that reminded us that Zelda should be a dungeon crawler, Elden Ring. The way the dungeons work in that game,
so good.
Exactly. I'm
Man.
telling you, I want to see the next level Zelda dungeon, and I also want to see, after completing those dungeons, plot twists. Like, I love that in Twilight Princess. You complete that third dungeon, and then Zant shows up, and you get Midnight Lament. Like, it's so good.
That scene was so amazing because, like,
exactly,
like Zant just shows up. It's like, oh man, Zant, and then Lunaru's like, yo, I got your back, homie, and he's like, nah. So I'm like, oh, Lunaru coming through. Oh wait, no, never mind. Like it was so cool.
We need those moments
so fast.
Like, we need those moments of triumph where you just get beaten down to the ground and reminded, no, this is not the end yet. This is just the beginning of your quest. And yes, I know we have that in the beginning of the game, but we need the turning point. And the turning point never showed up in Breath of the Wild. We need dungeons, highlights, and within those dungeons, at some point, a turning point. And that's how you build a good story. With a good red thread, personality, but most of all, an upturn and then a downturn, and then slowly building towards the climax.
So like,
well, I guess now that you're talking about it, I guess technically the turning point would have been when the Guardians turned. Like, if we had saw that as it was happening, like if we were playing through the game and that happened,
that would have been
in
nasty.
Real time,
it would have had a different.
Would have been devastating. You know what I mean? So it's like, because we saw it kind of from a bird's eye view of, oh, this is what happened. Like, bro, I can't imagine, like, they're in their freaking divine beasts and all of a sudden that thing turns against them and they're fighting for their life to the death. Like, and then Zelda, like, you know, her realizing, like, that was the turning point. But because we weren't in that present moment for it, it has a different effect.
Like, imagine
we know everything.
Imagine coming out of a dungeon and then your Sheikah Slate stops working, so you can't warp, and then just all the Guardians just turn, and you just have to run through Hyrule Field for your life to get to like any cover.
Menacing,
They all just turn once to just stare at you. It's like, well, that happened. But like, you know, you talk about how there's that turning point in Twilight Princess, but like in reality, most of the games follow that formula where you do 3 dungeons and then that turning point happens, and there's like 5 more dungeons. You know, as early as like Ocarina of Time, that one, it was also a great turning point because it's like, you know, 4D chess, because Ganondorf's all like, oh yeah, psych, I just waited for you to open it for me. But something that we don't see much that was addressed previously is I absolutely would like to see some more like betrayals. I think the most we have is like Hilda, which like that one, it sort of is predictable, but you still really appreciate the story. And like in general, a lot of Zelda characters, it does end up being sort of predictable because you know what's going to happen, but just, you know, you're waiting for that actual twist, like someone you think that is not going to betray you betrays you, you know, to get rid of that. After the 3 dungeons, the act happens after. No, like in the sequel, have whatever, you know, huge event, have it happen somewhere else, so it throws us for a loop.
Yeah, now I definitely agree with like both sides on that. Like, oh, a big thing happening here, big thing happening there. But like, you know, I want to lean a little bit towards like Conrad's way of thinking. Just can you imagine that like you do like maybe like 3-4 dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom, and then you get 3 Tears of the Kingdom, and then Gandalf just shows up and just takes your kneecaps and then just like leaves. Like that's a twist that I really want to see. Now, when it comes to something that I want from a past Zelda game that wasn't in Breath of the Wild, going into Tears of the Kingdom, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. An expanded version, and I said this a little bit earlier in the stream, expanded version of like hidden skills, maybe that possibly of a skill tree. because I want
I liked it a
Link.
lot.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
will want Link to have more expanded combat options in this.
I want to see I want to see a skill tree so bad.
Yeah,
Like it doesn't have to be at the level, like, because people will say, "Oh, please don't have it," but like you can keep it very simplified and not have it be too just like, oh, just stat increases.
I mean, yeah, even if it isn't a skill tree, just get like Helm Splitter back. Man,
right. Back slice, like, come on,
Play all
bro.
the classics.
At the very least, ending blow. Like, man. Breath of the Wild ending blow kind of hurt, but I understand why, because of the ragdoll physics or whatnot. But I would really like, just in general, more expanded fighting, because we've moved on from the point from the original Breath of the Wild where Link lost his memories, and that could be the reason why like his combat options weren't too vast or whatnot. Now that Link has gained his memories back, and there's like, there's part 2 after Breath of the Wild, there's, Tears of the Kingdom. We've seen what Link is like. Obviously, I can't use this as a point of comparison because it's a Hyrule Warriors game, but we kind of saw how Link was bowed in Age of Calamity, right? I'm not saying that I want combat like that, because that definitely won't fit with a Zelda type gameplay, whatever. But, I'm just saying that Link knew how to fight extremely well, and that in the Age of Calamity's lore, it's like, oh, he was taught under like the best sword master in all of Hyrule or whatever. So now that Link has had all of his memories returned, I want to see Link, have a little bit more of an expanded repertoire of attacks, moves, abilities, and whatnot. Especially since like apparently we don't have the Sheikah Slate no more. So I want to see like that reflected in his new arm ability and reflected in his sword play. But ladies and gentlemen, thank y'all so much for coming out to the stream, but this is where we're going to have to end it off when it comes to this episode of The Fifth Dimension. I want to thank all my guests. I'm going to go through them one by one once again, and I want them to let you know where you can find them specifically. Let's start off with Nikljj. Nikljj, thank you so much for being here. Let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm happy I could make it. I think this trailer came out at a perfect time, because I was like, I swear to God, if they drop something while I'm moving, I'm gonna be upset. So I'm glad this worked out. But thank you guys for having me. Always love talking Zelda with the guys. So yeah, you guys can find me on YouTube as Nikljj Gaming, or you can find me here on Twitch, live, ridiculous hours, degenerate hours, playing a lot of Splatoon right now. But we're gonna be doing a lot of Zelda, when it comes out for sure. Here at Nikljj_live on Twitch. Other than that, you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram as Nikljj, and I'll let you know when I'm up to the degeneracy. So thanks for having me.
Of course, anytime. And now let's throw it over to Conrad of Commonwealth Realm. Thank you so much for being here. Let them know where they can find you.
Well, you can find me mostly on Twitter and of course on YouTube, where we do the Inside Tears of the Kingdom, exploring everything, not only doing theories, which is common among Zelda tubers, but also exploring a lot of the gameplay possibilities. Because we all know gameplay comes before story in Zelda. That's what the Zelda team says.
Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to all the content you're putting out. Now let's throw it over to NBC. Let them know where they can find you, and once again, thank you so much for being here.
No problem.